So this morning we're talking to Bob Walkenhorst from the Rainmakers. So Bob, thank you for talking to us today. First question I'm going to ask you is, where are you at the moment?
I'm at my home in Kansas City, where I have been pretty much holed up for the last 6 months, as most everyone else in the U.S. has been.
Hold up, that's an interesting way of wording it. How's it working out for you?
Well, I've always been a musician and an artist, and so I work at home a lot anyway. And my wife is kind of the same. We're homebodies by nature, and our granddaughter lives with us. So we're hanging in there. I'm ready for it to change, but that will happen when it happens.
Fair enough. I mean, I've seen on the band's website that obviously you've been cancelling concerts. I'm sure that must be killing you.
Well, yes, it is because our band has been around for 30 years now, and I know we don't have 30 more years ahead of us. We have a limited number of years. So I'd like to play while we can.
Now, fair enough. So how are you keeping yourself busy over lockdown? Is there any? I mean, I know it's been a few years since your last new record. Is there any songwriting going on?
Oh, absolutely. That's something that never stops. You really can't make that stop. I've done quite a few different projects over the last few years. I did an album with my daughter,
Yes.
Una, who's a
Yes.
singer-writer in her own right, and we decided while the time was right, we had this little window of time, we would do an album together. So we did that in 2018, and we're out playing those songs in 2019. The Rainmakers, I think we made our last album in 2015, actually. But as the music industry changed and the way to make a living playing and recording music changed, I got involved in Patreon. So I started my Patreon last January, and Patreon can be a lot of different things. Some artists say, hey, send me money so I can keep doing things what I do.
Right.
I decided that I wanted to make a song every month and hopefully a video every month, and I have done that so far. A new song comes out the first of every month, goes out to my patrons. They support me financially and spiritually, and I keep going.
Now, those are Bob Walkenhorst songs, aren't they? Not Rainmakers songs.
Right. The Rainmakers. We had a farewell concert in 1990.
Oh, okay.
And you learn to never say never say
Right.
farewell. We did have a farewell concert last summer in Norway, which Norway was always kind of our home away from home. And we did have a farewell concert there because I felt certain we would not be coming back there for extensive touring again. So we did. But the Rainmakers, we have kind of settled into this. We play a few times a year in our home of Kansas. We rarely venture outside that circle. Our bass player, Rich Ruth, lives in Nashville, so it's always, some logistics to get him to join us. But, it just kind of raises a lot of questions in that, you look at artists like Bob Dylan or Paul McCartney or the Rolling Stones that have this huge catalog and this huge fan base, and they can always go out and play somewhere. For smaller bands that, we made some records. We never became millionaires. When we go out to tour, it's a bunch of people on a train or a bunch of people in a van, and it's like, it becomes a question of how long can you do that? How long is that pleasurable? So it starts becoming a philosophical question after a while. What do you do with music when you become older and you're not Paul McCartney and you still love it? And how do you make that fit your life?
That's reasonable. You mentioned your last record was 2015. That was cover band, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was kind of a little thing. We didn't really market that too actively.
Yeah. In fact, I tried tracking it down on Apple Music, and all I could get hold of was Merkerman.
Yeah, that we released because we had clearance on.
Oh, okay.
Don't tell the rest.
I shan't mention. I mean, to be fair, it's basically Dogleg anyway, really, isn't it?
Kinda, yeah. I never thought about that, but it really kind of is. That's kind of Rich's groove.
That guitar riff at the opening. But having said that, I mean, Merkerman, that's Norwegian for dirty man, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was Dirty Bastard was what they told us was the.
Yeah, okay, I can go with that. So I'm going to ask, why Norway?
Well, I wish it had been New Zealand, really. I mean,
Yes.
other places, but if there's only going to be one country that goes for you besides your home country, Norway's a pretty good one. And, a beautiful place. Very supportive of our band. We would have these huge gaps in our career, and Norway was always there waiting for us. And now we have lots of friends and contacts over there, and yeah, so it was really a home away from home for us for the last 15 years or 10 years or plus. But yeah, it just clicked in Norway. We had great record company support, but more importantly, this was 1986.
Yeah.
They had just one of those scenes. I mean, it's a small population. Had one of those music scenes that if a couple of the right journalists said, "Listen to this band,"
Right.
everyone did. So we kind of went from never being heard of to being heard of by everyone in Norway in a short period of time. That didn't happen in every other country, but that's our version of the story.
No, fair enough. That works. Oddly enough, a couple of Norwegian friends of mine are actually big fans of the Rainmakers, so it tracks.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. So I mean, so how is your Norwegian?
Oh, terrible! I cannot speak another language. I can barely speak English.
Oh, fair enough then. Fair enough. Well, so we're not going to see a Norwegian language release of any of your albums anytime soon.
No, they say that if you don't learn a foreign language by the time you're 8 or 9, if that part of your brain really just goes away, that ability to translate and realign objects and actions with different terms. And I never learned a foreign language. I came from a very small town that didn't even offer foreign languages in the school system. So that part of my brain went bye-bye a long time ago.
Oh, so that's an awful shame, that, because I mean, I was thinking of bands like ABBA who would release same song in 4 different languages. We're not about to see
bunch of show-offs.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that's the only reference we're going to get to ABBA in this interview. To be fair, I don't think we'll be able to shoehorn them in again. Right. So
we promise.
Yeah. So since we're mentioning records, are there any plans for a new Rainmakers record?
There are not.
Okay.
Like I said, you kind of have to figure out how music is going to fit in your life right now. And while we very much enjoyed the last 3 albums we made in 2011, 2013, and 2015, marketing those records is just difficult. I mean, it's hard to make money on good albums. So my original music, new original music, is solo work.
Right.
Live performances will be somewhat of some solo things and some very fun Rainmaker shows a few times a year.
Well, I know I've listened to the Thanksgiving live recording, and you sound like you're having enormous fun doing it.
Oh, we really are. I mean, when the band was working really hard in the 80s and we toured US and Canada, we came very close to coming to Australia and New Zealand, but never quite got there.
Okay.
Covered Western Europe, really played a lot in Scandinavia and a lot in Germany and a lot in England. We were young and angry and hungry, and I wasn't the nicest guy in the world. Let's put it that way. I was kind of ambitious and driven, and
right.
I was the leader, and I knew how it had to be done. And I think that when we had kind of this reunion in 2011, it was the chance for all of us to do it and weed out all that ego stuff and just do it for the love of music and for the camaraderie of sharing music with people that you have made this journey with.
Okay, that makes sense. And I know you've come up with an interesting approach to keeping the live stuff going with the house concerts. How did that come about?
The what?
The house concerts.
Oh, house concerts. Yeah, house concerts have saved my butt. I had heard of people doing that, where you go to someone's house and play an acoustic unplugged concert in their living room. I was hesitant to do that. I just couldn't quite get my head around the idea of sitting with a bunch of people in the living room and playing them songs.
Right.
Finally, someone enticed me into doing it, and it opened a door to a much more personal way of sharing music with your crowd. And if your crowd is 20 people in a living room, or I have played for as few as 3 people in a living room,
is that not awkward?
No, and actually, that's the part you have to get over. You have to get over being awkward and self-conscious and
Right.
start approaching it as this is the way music was performed for centuries.
Oh,
Small
okay.
groups in homes. Uh, get rid of the lights. Get rid of the PA. It's just human beings sharing something that moves your emotions, moves your hearts. And when you get to be the person that brings the guitar and brings the voice, and you get to stir up those feelings and those memories and those touchstones for people, it can be a very, very moving situation. 9 times out of 10, it's great. One time out of every 10, things can get a little sideways.
Well, how do you set on a set list for a show like that?
I have a set list in my head,
Hmm.
but I often say, "What do you want to hear?"
Right. Yeah.
And usually, will hire me is someone who's been listening to my band since they were in college,
Right.
and they know what they hear, and they will. It's never the same songs though. I mean, there may be the same two or three, but then it goes way off track. So I kind of have to be prepared with with 7 or 8 albums worth of material for people to pick from. But that's part of the joy. It's like I don't play the same 3 songs over and over. I don't play the same 10 songs over and over.
Right.
I wait this way and that way, and that again has been an unexpected joy in this experience.
Do you ever get people telling you, whatever you do, don't play this song?
Yeah, occasionally. I mean, I've written a few songs that I am not proud of and that I don't perform. And even if I get asked to, I don't perform. And sometimes people ask me, make sure you don't play that.
Dare I ask which ones you're not proud of? You've opened up a can of worms here, Bob.
Well, on our first album, 2 of the songs that got the most attention for our band were 2 songs that I'm really not proud of. One is Big Fat Blonde, and another is a song called Government Cheese, which is kind of an anti-welfare state type of song. And I wrote those at a time when no one was listening to our band,
Okay.
and I had the idea of writing something that you would have to answer for, much less perform 30 years later, never crossed my mind. And as I found that people were listening to what our band was saying and what my lyrics were containing, I realized there's a responsibility that goes with that. Say things that you really mean, not just things that are meant to inflame people or meant to just draw a strong reaction or just meant to be ridiculous. You can still have humor. It doesn't need to be at someone's expense.
No, that sounds reasonable. It's interesting you mentioned Government Cheese because I was gonna see if you were interested in talking a bit of politics. I mean, obviously you're American, and I technically am American as well, although I don't really sound like it, I realise. And you mentioned Government Cheese because it is somewhat anti-socialist, and yet, like 2 albums later on, Spend It on Love, you're talking about countries paying heavy taxes for dreams they still hold. So obviously, so it was like there was a little bit of a change went on there.
Well, I always compare songwriting to you were keeping a journal when you were in your 20s or whatever age you wrote a particular line. You're keeping a journal, and 30 years later, people want you to read from that journal again. Have you learned anything between the time that you wrote, and the years that have passed? I learned particularly as the band started becoming successful, that there are some people in life that are lucky, and I have been one of those people. And there are lots and lots of people in the world who luck does not find. And it is much more important to have a heart for people that haven't had as easy a road as you have had than
Right.
it is to assign any kind of blame to people for their own situations.
No, that's a very, very reasonable response. But I don't know if you're aware of this. I hopped on my computer this morning to do a bit of last minute research before I had a chat with you, and I made the mistake of typing into my web browser therainmakers.com,
Yeah,
which is obviously not the band's web address, and that web address actually redirects to Donald Trump's Twitter feed.
you are effing kidding me.
I checked it twice to make sure I hadn't got it wrong. That's where therainmakers.com redirects to Donald J. Trump on Twitter.
It's odd to me. Until you've said this, in all my years of dealing with the internet, I've always typed in rainmakers.com.
Right.
I've never typed in the Rainmakers.com. It never crossed my mind. It was just always Rainmakers.com.
Yeah, I
I
don't know
guess I
what
should
made me
have.
do that this morning, just, by force of habit. But yeah, that's what turned up, mate. So, I'm taking it from this that you're possibly not the staunchest Trump fan in the world.
I am not. I think my country is in a pretty dark place right now, and most history lessons will can draw parallels between what's happening in the U.S. and what has happened in other countries that have gone down a very dark path, and it is frightening. I still have faith in the people of majority of the people in the U.S. to correct this path, and I hope that happens. We'll know in a couple of months.
Yes, we will, won't we? I mean, I'm gonna have to get my mail-in ballot in very, very shortly because it's a bit tricky getting to a voting booth in Florida for me right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So what else is coming up for you and the Rainmakers in the near future?
That will depend entirely on how the U.S. gets control of the pandemic.
Right.
Because our age group, our fan base, is in the vulnerable age group. I don't want to have a hand in giving people a reason to get together. I'm just not going to do it. We had to cancel a June concert. We have already canceled a November concert. We haven't even looked for any other things past that because we just don't know. But I am not going to be the reason that people get together and someone gets ill or someone dies. Our band is not going to have a hand in that. So everything is on hold. I suspect there will be a day we play together again, but that remains to be seen. And until then, I will stay active as an artist. I will make a new song each month. I will send it out to my patrons. And I paint, I do other things, and I love my family. So I have things to do.
Brilliant. And sadly, I don't think we're ever going to see you down here in New Zealand, are we?
Probably not. Like I said, we came very close to making that trip in the late 80s, and it fell through at the last minute.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I did get a chance to see you guys. I saw you in Manchester, and I think it was 86.
Yeah.
Yeah, 86 or 88. I can't remember. 88 it would have been, yes.
In Manchester, was it a club gig or was that the Tube? Did we shoot that where was that shot?
No, the Tube was shot in Newcastle.
That was Newcastle. Yeah,
so, no, you were promoting the second album, Tornado, and you played, it was either the International or the Academy, I forget which now. We're going back several years. And I remember it being a good show. My one big memory was Steve Phillips going for a wander through the audience and hitting me in the back with the headstock of his guitar.
I'll ask him about that if he remembers that happening.
I'm sure he remembers it vividly. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what else was I going to ask you about? So you mentioned the painting. Why is it that so many musicians tend to then move into painting? What's the connection there? Because it's clearly a synergy.
I think the connection is, particularly for rock musicians, is part of getting to be a musician, and part of being a good musician is never quite growing up. You know, you have to keep in touch with that kid, and that kid likes to do a bunch of different things, and it just depends on which crayon you pick up that day. You know, do you pick up the guitar, or do you pick up the paintbrush, or the clay, or you just like making things? I think that's very, very much a primal type of impulse, is you want to make things, and I'm very making things. It doesn't matter so much what I'm making them out of, as long as I'm making something.
Well, that sounds fair, yeah. And you mentioned picking up the guitar, but you weren't originally the guitarist, were you?
No, I was originally the drummer when our band first started out as a trio. Drums were my first love, and I still have my same old set of drums that I got when I was in high school. I use those on recordings. But eventually, as my interests became more focused on songwriting and being the singer in the band, it was harder to do that, to execute the songs from behind the drums. And Pat Tomic, one of the nicest guys in the world, joined our band and became the drummer that our band really needed.
Yeah. So you never sort of fancy going on the Phil Collins route?
No, and I think you can look at drummers like Ringo or Don Henley or any of those singing drummers. Eventually you hit an age where you let somebody else play the drums. Yeah, I'm going to sing.
Well, I mean, you mentioned a fascinating combination there. I mean, I saw Don Henley here in Auckland last year, and the play out, the encore for their show obviously was Hotel California. That was spectacular and breathtaking. But then you also mentioned Ringo Starr, both as a singer and a drummer, and that's controversial. You know it is.
No, it's not. Ringo's a great singer. I mean, the thing with being a great singer is knowing what you do well and what you don't do well. And
Okay.
Ringo knows what he does. And if you can ever find some live clips of Ringo singing "Boys" or some of those old classic rock songs, "Honey Don't." I mean, he is killing it. Ringo's a great singer.
Now, fair enough. I mean, go ahead.
Ringo had, in the first few years the Beatles were broken up, Ringo had more top 10 singles than any of the rest of them.
Is that right? Now that okay? I mean, I'm feeling schooled here, and obviously, I'm on dangerous ground correcting a singer about singers. Obviously, I mean, my singing is probably about as good as your Norwegian, to be fair. So I'm on very, very dangerous ground. But I noticed that when you leapt to Ringo's defense, it was as a singer, not a drummer.
Well, I would think the conversation was about, which one is he? Well, he is both. I mean, he's really, very good at both. He is an exceptionally good drummer. And I think that just as he turned 80, there was a lot of commentary about really what a great musician he is. I mean, he never wanted to have the flash of Neil Peart or that score, or Copeland or that school of drummers. That was not what he was doing. The Beatles were not soloists. They were making songs. Ringo played the song, and that is actually, I think, a more specialized talent than showing off your chops all the time. So, Ringo is the foundation. Him and Charlie Watts. Yeah.
Now, we found common ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charlie Watts doesn't sing though.
No, that's a very good point. Yes, he hardly even speaks, to be fair.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
That's what I've always.
But I was trying very, very hard there to get a little bit of controversy going, and I noticed. I mean, this must be a Midwestern thing. You deflected my attempts at controversy very, very deftly.
Well, I mean, I'm not afraid of controversy, but I don't think that, that's not a controversy. It's like either you like Ringo singing or you don't. But I think most of the world would love to always hear a little help from my friends.
Yeah, fair enough. Which is the most ironic title for a Ringo song, really, isn't it, if you think about it?
Yeah, yes.
But yeah, I mean, just going back to the Midwestern thing. I mean, you say you're in Kansas City right now, and I've been listening to your music for quite some time. It's almost like Kansas City or Missouri in general is almost like the sixth member of the band. You reference that place so much in your lyrics. It's clearly a strong part of your identity.
I think when you're trying to find your spot in creating original music, you can either be looking for styles that you're going to imitate or adapt, or you look the other way. You just look to where you're from and you write about that. And we were fortunate enough when our band was really kind of getting on our feet as a recording unit, that our record company and our producer said, no, be who you are, be
right.
Where you're from, write about that, because guys on the coasts can't write about that. I mean, they can fake it maybe now and then, but if you have lived small town life, if you've lived in the middle of a place that is as far from an ocean as you can possibly be, that's a unique perspective. So be true to your own unique perspective, whatever art you're involved in, and tell the world what life looks like from here.
Now, fair enough. It reminds me of the song Central Time by Pokey LaFarge.
I'm not familiar with that, but I'll look it up.
Yeah, so he sings about you can keep your West Coast, you can keep your East Coast. I ain't living on no coast. I'm living on Central Time. which does kind of work, really. Yeah. So So I guess one last couple of things I was going to ask, because like I say, I've been a Rainmakers fan for quite some. I've been listening to you guys for years, and there's a couple of songs that have always stuck me. I've always wanted questions about. So if you don't mind, I'm going to have a quick pry. First question I've got to ask is, who was the one that got away?
It was not a person. It was.
Okay.
I mean, I think that there are people in each of our lives that you think maybe that one got away. But it's actually more about ideas, more about your goal of what you want your life to be and what you want your life to contain and what truth you want your life to represent, and that you don't let those things get away, that you identify those as they're passing through your screen and you grab a hold of them and you stick with those things. And when it comes to love, mine didn't get away.
Good man. I mean, what I'm now discovering is I've been misreading that song for 35 years, and that's fine. That's fine. It's good to be corrected.
Well, I mean, that's actually one of the first songs I ever wrote. In fact, when I play that for my house concerts, I always tell the story that every songwriter has a song that is the first one you wrote that there was nothing wrong with. And that's when I finished that song, I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this song. And that song is still a lot of fun to play, both with the band and solo. And 30 plus years later, I'm still very happy with the lyrics of that song. I think that it encompasses not just love, not just a relationship. It encompasses how are you going to feel when you're an old person and you're looking back? Are you going to be okay with what you held on to and what you didn't? And I wrote that when I was in my 20s, and kind of like, yeah, okay, I think that's a valid idea.
Fair enough then. And there are others. I mean, given it's probably one of the most drum friendly songs you guys have done. Do you ever feel like kicking Pat off the stool for that one?
Oh no, no. He does it real well, and it's hard enough keeping up all the breathing of that song while playing guitar, much less.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. And the other song I need to ask you about was Hootie Hoo. To what extent is that a true story?
Well, the true story part of that is that I had a brother-in-law who would just enter a room and go, Hootie Hoo! That's how he made his entrance. And I thought that's a great song title. But the narrative of the boy climbing the water tower and writing the girl's name and then losing each other and just each person going off on their own life. I mean, I think that's everybody's story. That's kind of some version of everybody's story, that you're going to have those initial loves in your life, and life is going to go on, and things will change, and stay the journey and take notes, because it's the only journey you got. So take notes and make something meaningful out of it.
And did you ever climb the water tower?
I honestly did not.
Fair enough.
One of the things of being a writer is you don't have to do it all. You just have to know people who did.
Okay, yeah. Other people's stories, fair enough.
Yeah. It's like if you want to write a story about murder, you don't have to be a murderer.
Okay, that's a very, very valid point. Yes.
Valid.
Yeah. All right, then. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground this morning, Bob. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. When I told Michelle, my wife, that I'm talking to a guy in New Zealand in a couple hours, she was like, "Well, great. That's amazing. And you haven't got to talk to anybody in a long time, so as you can tell, I have a lot to say."
Well, I'm glad I managed to catch a little bottle of inside you. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Steve, it was my pleasure, and hi, New Zealand, and thanks for listening through the years.
Thanks a lot, mate.